In a world that sings the praises of kindness, it is tempting to believe that kindness, in its purest form, can solve every discord, heal every wound, and bridge every gap. And yet there is a troubling paradox that we often overlook. Kindness, when offered in its purest form, is a gift that can transform lives. It is a force that can heal wounds, bring comfort, and create bonds between individuals and communities. Yet there is an often unspoken danger in kindness when it is overindulged or given without thought. The notion that kindness is inherently virtuous and always beneficial is a misconception. While kindness in moderation is undoubtedly powerful, there is a perilous tendency to mistake indulgence for generosity, especially when kindness is offered without consideration of context, boundaries, or purpose. When this happens, kindness can lose its value, become a source of complacency, and unintentionally foster a sense of entitlement that can lead to disrespect. When we are kind in excess, without measure or restraint, we risk stripping kindness of its value. This is not to say that kindness should be withheld, nor that we should stop being generous in our dealings with others. But when kindness is given indiscriminately, without thought for the recipient's ability to appreciate it or reciprocate it, it ceases to be a meaningful act and instead becomes an expected obligation. It is in this overabundance that kindness risks becoming a right rather than a gift. We are all familiar with the feeling that arises when something is handed to us freely, without us having to earn it. Initially, we may feel gratitude, but over time, as we become accustomed to receiving, that initial sense of appreciation fades. We begin to take it for granted. And soon what was once a cherished offering is viewed as something expected, even demanded. This dynamic plays out in our personal relationships as well. How many times have we witnessed someone, perhaps a family member or close friend, showered with kindness to the point where it becomes clear that they are no longer grateful for the attention or effort? At first, the kind gestures are welcomed, seen as acts of love or care, but gradually, the recipient starts to expect these gestures, demanding them, without acknowledgement of the giver's sacrifice. The kindness, once offered as a selfless act, now seems to be a duty, something that no longer holds the same emotional resonance or value. It is crucial to understand that when kindness is given without boundaries, it fosters a dynamic in which one party is continually overextending themselves while the other remains passive or reliant. The giver may begin to feel drained, exhausted, or even resentful. The one offering kindness may even begin to feel disrespected, for they are no longer giving from a place of genuine care, but out of a sense of obligation. The recipient, in turn, loses sight of the deeper value of kindness, and instead of feeling gratitude or respect, they come to view it as something they deserve. This erosion of the meaning of kindness is not confined to personal relationships. It also affects larger societal interactions, when kindness is expected rather than earned. This expectation, if not tempered with an understanding of the reciprocal nature of relationships, can create an environment in which true generosity is undervalued. In workplaces, communities, or even in the context of broader societal interactions, individuals may begin to demand more than what is reasonable or appropriate, pushing others to give up themselves without regard for their own limits. A culture that fosters this sense of entitlement, where kindness is viewed as an automatic right rather than a voluntary gift, can also breed complacency. Individuals in such a culture may cease to strive for self-improvement, knowing that their needs will be met regardless of their efforts. The recipient of excessive kindness may come to believe that there is no need for personal growth or responsibility, as they are assured that kindness will be bestowed upon them regardless of their actions. As a result, they fail to develop the necessary skills, resilience, or independence to thrive in the world. The kindness that is intended to help them may in fact prevent them from becoming the capable, self-reliant individuals they are meant to be. Kindness, when given too freely and without thought, can undermine the very traits that allow people to succeed and grow. It creates an environment where people are not challenged to face their struggles or overcome obstacles, but are instead sheltered from the harsh realities of life. By removing the opportunity for personal development, kindness may inadvertently create a sense of helplessness, leading individuals to rely on others for support instead of developing the inner resources necessary to navigate the complexities of the world. Furthermore, the overindulgence of kindness often leads to a lack of accountability. If one person constantly gives and the other person constantly receives, the lines between what is owed and what is offered become blurred. In the absence of healthy boundaries, the recipient may begin to feel that they are entitled to everything they receive and that no effort is required on their part. So this sense of entitlement not only diminishes the value of kindness, but also breeds a lack of respect for the giver. The kindness is no longer appreciated, but rather expected, and as a result, the giver's efforts are taken for granted. This dynamic can have far-reaching consequences in various aspects of life. For instance, in the workplace, a leader who continually overextends themselves to their employees without establishing clear expectations or boundaries may inadvertently foster an atmosphere of complacency. Employees may come to view the leader's kindness as an obligation and begin to demand more without ever giving in return. This creates a toxic cycle in which the leader's kindness is no longer seen as an admirable quality, but rather as something that can be manipulated or exploited. Eventually, the leader may feel taken advantage of, and their authority and respect within the organization may diminish. In personal relationships, this dynamic can be even more destructive. When one person continually sacrifices their own needs to meet the demands of another, they may eventually feel neglected, exhausted, or disrespected. The kindness that was once freely given becomes a burden, and the imbalance in the relationship can create resentment. The recipient may fail to recognize the toll that their expectations are taking, and the giver may begin to feel unappreciated or disregarded. In the end, the once beautiful relationship may break down, not because of a lack of kindness, but because kindness was given without limits, boundaries, or mutual respect. In these scenarios, the key issue is not the kindness itself, but the lack of balance in its distribution. Kindness is most powerful when it is offered thoughtfully and with consideration for both the giver and the receiver. When kindness is given in excess, without the necessary boundaries or recognition of the other person's capacity to reciprocate, it loses its significance and becomes a source of strain and resentment. True kindness is not a commodity to be dispensed at will, but a precious gift that requires careful attention, context, and circumstance. It is the recognition that kindness, like any virtue, must be tempered with wisdom, understanding, and respect for the needs and limitations of both parties involved. Only when kindness is offered with this awareness can it retain its power to uplift and inspire, rather than inadvertently leading to disrespect and disillusionment. When kindness is given without boundaries, it becomes easy for both the giver and the receiver to fall into complacency. Boundaries, though often perceived as restrictive or harsh, when kindness is offered without these necessary constraints, it can lead to a situation where the recipient takes the act of kindness for granted, and the giver becomes resentful or exhausted. This imbalance is not only detrimental to both parties, but it also undermines the true purpose of kindness. Without boundaries, kindness quickly loses its capacity to inspire or elevate. The reason for this is simple. When something is always available without limit, its value diminishes. We understand this principle in many areas of life. If you are given unlimited access to a resource, you may initially feel gratitude and appreciation, but over time, the gratitude fades and expectations take root. The resource no longer feels special. It becomes a basic necessity, a right rather than a privilege. The same principle applies to kindness. When kindness is extended continually without any pause, without any consideration for the giver's emotional or physical resources, it begins to feel like an obligation. not a choice. The recipient no longer sees the kindness as a special offering, but as something to be expected, and as a result, the dynamic of the relationship shifts from one of mutual respect to one of entitlement. The absence of boundaries also stifles growth, particularly for the recipient. Kindness, in its purest form, is meant to support and encourage growth, not to shield someone from the challenges of life. When kindness is given without limits, it may prevent the recipient from facing the consequences of their own action. If one person is constantly coming to the aid of another, even when they have not taken the necessary steps to help themselves, they enable a sense of dependency rather than fostering independence. This enabling behavior keeps the recipient from developing the resilience, problem-solving skills. The more kindness is offered without regard for boundaries, the more the recipient can become complacent, expecting others to meet their needs without effort on their part. For the giver, the lack of boundaries is equally damaging. Kindness is inherently a selfless act, but it is not infinite. Every person has emotional, mental, and physical limits. When kindness is given without any thought to one's own well-being, it can lead to burnout, frustration, and it is easy for a person to give endlessly, hoping that their kindness will be appreciated and reciprocated. But the reality is that without proper boundaries, the act of kindness becomes a drain. The giver may start to feel that their efforts are being taken for granted, that their generosity is no longer being received with the same level of gratitude. This imbalance can cause the giver to withdraw, not because they no longer want to offer kindness, but because they feel emotionally depleted or unappreciated. In extreme cases, the giver may even come to resent the recipient, not for their actions, but for the fact that they have allowed the relationship to become one-sided. Boundaries are also essential for maintaining the dignity of both parties. The person receiving kindness must not be put in the position of feeling like a perpetual recipient or dependent. When boundaries are respected, both individuals are given the space to offer and receive in a way that maintains the respect and honor of the relationship. The delicate balance of kindness, where both parties contribute and acknowledge each other's needs and limitations, preserves the integrity of the interaction. In such a scenario, the recipient remains grateful, and the giver remains empowered, and the kindness exchange remains authentic and valued. In the absence of boundaries, relationships often become strained. What begins as an act of love or goodwill can, over time, evolve into a burden for the giver and a source of discomfort for the receiver. If kindness becomes excessive and unbalanced, both parties risk losing sight of the deeper meaning of their actions. Kindness without boundaries becomes diluted, its original intent obscured by a lack of respect for the needs, limits, and responsibilities of those. By setting clear boundaries, we ensure that kindness remains a meaningful exchange, something that continues to inspire, uplift, and foster genuine connection between people. Kindness, though universally celebrated as a virtue, can sometimes lead to unintended consequences when it is offered. When we sacrifice our principles, our sense of right and wrong, or our core values for the sake of kindness, we inadvertently risk losing something far more important than we realize: our own integrity. Integrity is the foundation of any authentic relationship, and when kindness is used as a means to avoid difficult truths or maintain, there are times when we may be tempted to offer kindness in order to avoid confrontation or to please others, even when doing so compromises our beliefs or goes against our better judgment. In such instances, kindness becomes a way to sidestep uncomfortable truths, a tool used to avoid the tension that often accompanies difficult conversations or decisions. The problem with this kind of kindness is that it may provide immediate relief, but it also prevents growth, both for the giver and the receiver. When we are kind merely for the sake of avoiding conflict or discomfort, We forgo the opportunity to engage in honest, constructive dialogue. The truth, however difficult it may be, is often the key to resolving underlying issues and fostering mutual understanding. By choosing kindness over truth, we risk perpetuating the very problems we seek to avoid, allowing resentment and miscommunication to grow in the shadows. The danger lies in the fact that kindness, when used as a shield to protect oneself from discomfort, can easily slide into dishonesty. We may find ourselves agreeing to things we do not believe in, or endorsing actions that contradict our values, all in the name of being kind. In these moments, our external actions may appear loving or supportive, but internally, we know that we are betraying our own sense of truth. This disconnect between our actions and our internal beliefs creates a kind of inner tension that is difficult to resolve. It may seem harmless at first, but over time, these small acts of dishonesty can accumulate, eroding our sense of self-respect and leading us to question our own authenticity. It becomes harder and harder to reconcile our desire to be kind with our need to be truthful. And in the end, both our kindness and our integrity suffer. Furthermore, when we continually sacrifice our integrity for the sake of kindness, we set a dangerous precedent for how we engage with others. When we fail to set boundaries or stand firm in our beliefs, we inadvertently teach others that their actions or behavior are acceptable, even when they conflict with our values or sense of right and wrong. This is not kindness, it is enabling. Enabling others by constantly compromising our integrity to appease them only serves to perpetuate patterns of unhealthy behavior, creating a dynamic in which both parties are trapped in a cycle of superficial harmony rather than true growth. In relationships, the cost of sacrificing integrity for kindness can be particularly damaging. The foundation of any meaningful relationship is trust. Trust that we can be ourselves without fear of judgment, and trust that the other person will respect our values, beliefs, and boundaries. When we abandon our integrity in favor of kindness, we create an atmosphere of dishonesty where neither party can truly express themselves. The giver may begin to feel resentful for constantly suppressing their own needs, while the receiver may come to expect that their desires will always be met, regardless of the cost. Over time, the relationship becomes one of superficial pleasantries rather than genuine connection, and both individuals suffer from a lack of depth or authenticity. The loss of integrity through kindness can also extend beyond personal relationships, affecting our professional lives and interactions with the world at large. In the workplace, for example, you may feel pressured to be excessively kind or agreeable in order to maintain a pleasant environment or to avoid stepping on others' toes. This can lead to compromises that undermine our professional integrity, whether it involves turning a blind eye to unethical behavior, withholding constructive criticism, or failing to advocate for what is right. When kindness is prioritized over integrity in such contexts, it can foster a toxic culture of complacency, where dishonesty and manipulation are overlooked in the name of keeping the peace. The long-term consequences of such behavior can be far-reaching, eroding the moral fabric of an organization and damaging the trust and respect that are essential to its success. It is important to understand that integrity does not negate kindness. True kindness, when it is aligned with personal integrity, can be far more powerful than kindness that is offered at the expense of one's values. The difference lies in the ability to remain true to oneself while still extending compassion to others. It is entirely possible to be kind while maintaining one's integrity, but it requires a willingness to be honest, to set boundaries, and to communicate openly, even when it is uncomfortable. In fact, sometimes the kindest thing we can do for another person is to be honest with them, even if it means delivering a difficult truth. While this may be harder in the short term, it fosters mutual respect and allows both individuals to grow and learn from the experience. The challenge, then, is not to abandon kindness, but to recognize when it is being used as a way to avoid uncomfortable truths or to uphold a facade of harmony. Kindness must always be grounded in integrity, for only when the two are in harmony can kindness truly fulfill its potential to foster genuine connection and understanding. By being true to ourselves, even in the face of discomfort, we can offer kindness that is not only selfless, but also deeply rooted in the values that make us whole. Kindness, when misdirected or misapplied, can often morph into enabling behavior which can have a far-reaching negative impact on both the giver and the recipient. The line between kindness and enabling can be difficult to see because the intention behind both is rooted in care and a desire to help. However, enabling goes beyond simply helping. It prevents growth, responsibility, and personal development. Kindness, when it becomes enabling, ceases to serve its highest purpose and instead fosters dependency, weakens the recipient's ability to cope with challenges, and ultimately disempowers both parties involved. Enabling occurs when kindness is extended in such a way that it allows someone to avoid the natural consequences of their actions or to continue engaging in unhealthy behaviors without facing any real accountability. While kindness is meant to lift people up, enabling behavior keeps them stuck in patterns that prevent growth and healing. For example, when a friend continuously lends money to another who is consistently irresponsible with finances, or when a parent constantly intervenes in their child's life to prevent any discomfort or hardship, they are not helping, but enabling. The kind gestures, though seemingly well-meaning, only prolong the recipient's struggle and allow them to avoid the necessary lessons that come from confronting their own mistakes. The recipient is never given the opportunity to develop the skills, resilience, or responsibility needed to move beyond their current state. The danger in enabling is that it creates a sense of dependency. The recipient becomes accustomed to being taken care of, to having others solve their problems for them. In the short term, they may feel grateful for the kindness they receive, but in the long run, they become less capable of navigating their own challenges. The act of enabling, whether it is in the form of financial support, emotional cushioning, or offering solutions to problems that should be faced head-on, prevents the individual from learning how to cope with difficulties independently. Without the opportunity to face and overcome hardship, they miss out on personal growth, and over time, their sense of self-efficacy, belief in their ability to handle life's challenges, weakens. The result is a cycle of dependency that continues to perpetuate itself. For the giver, enabling can also be detrimental. The act of constantly stepping in to solve someone else's problems may come from a place of love, but it is often rooted in a desire to control the situation or avoid discomfort. This can lead to a sense of frustration and burnout for the giver as they realize that their efforts are not leading to any lasting change. Instead of feeling the satisfaction of helping someone grow or overcome a challenge, they may begin to feel trapped in a cycle of endless giving where their efforts are never enough, and the recipient's problems never seem to improve. Over time, this creates resentment, as the giver realizes that their kindness is being exploited and they are not receiving the respect or recognition they deserve. Furthermore, enabling behavior can create an unhealthy dynamic within relationships. When one person continuously steps in to rescue the other, it undermines the sense of mutual respect and equality that should exist between them. The recipient may come to view the giver as someone who is always there to pick up the pieces, without ever having to face the consequences of their own actions. This creates an imbalance of power where the recipient remains in a passive role and the giver is placed in a position of constant caretaker. This power imbalance can lead to feelings of resentment and frustration on both sides. The recipient may feel helpless as they never develop the skills needed to solve their own problems, while the giver may feel unappreciated and burdened by the never-ending demands. In a broader context, enabling behavior has the potential to perpetuate unhealthy societal patterns. When individuals, families, or communities become accustomed to enabling rather than encouraging personal responsibility, they create environments where people are not held accountable for their actions. This can lead to a culture of complacency, where individuals are not motivated to improve or change because they know that others will step in to solve their problem. In such a culture, growth and progress are stifled as individuals do not learn to take responsibility for their lives and their actions. Enabling behavior, whether in the form of financial assistance, emotional support, or intervention in personal matters, can create a society where people feel entitled to assistance without ever having to earn it or contribute to it in meaningful ways. The distinction between kindness and enabling lies in the recognition of when to step back and allow the other person to face their own struggles. True kindness involves offering support, encouragement, and help, but it also involves recognizing when it is time to let the person handle their own challenges. By doing so, we empower others to grow, to take responsibility for their actions, and to become stronger individuals. Enabling, on the other hand, involves taking on more responsibility than is necessary and preventing the individual from learning the lessons they need to move forward. It is a fine line to walk, and it requires discernment and awareness. In offering kindness, we must be mindful of whether our actions are truly helping, or if we are simply preventing someone from taking the necessary steps to help themselves. Kindness, when used appropriately, has the power to foster growth, self-reliance, and resilience. But when it becomes enabling, it disempowers both the giver and the receiver, creating a cycle of dependency that is difficult to break. By recognizing the difference between genuine support and enabling, we can ensure that our kindness leads to empowerment, not dependence. We must learn to offer help in ways that encourage growth and responsibility, allowing others to rise to the occasion and face the challenges that are an inherent part of life. In doing so, we preserve the true spirit of kindness, ensuring that it serves its highest purpose, to uplift and inspire rather than to entrap and diminish.